Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Wappelville. We're going to do another live session here, and we have something that's kind of different, especially for me, because I've never really painted anything like this. This is from Marvel Crisis Protocol. You can see the logos and some of the reference pictures and such. Now, what I'm going to have to do is get things started here, and that means try and set up the chat. So just let me do that. Just bear with me here while we do that. Get this little YouTube widget going, and I think you can see it sitting over here, the big old gray box of death, which hopefully turns into a transparent box of communication. We'll see what happens here. Means I do have to type in some passwords, so when you hear the tap tap, you know what that means. There we go. Gotta get our hopefully password in here. And it's gonna let us actually see what you say. Trying it again. Yay. Yes, yes, yes. Allow. And there we go. Hey Mariah, how's it going? So I'm just going to change my opacity real quick here. And then we're going to see which one of these we can... There we go. So I think we're good to go. And again, Captain Marvel, I believe. Captain Marvel, I presume. Now we're good to go. So let's tap on this little reference right here. Oh, runs with Caesars. Yeah, let's hope that we can kind of match. See what we got here. We got a little combination of the shiny. Now we do have some opposing references. I'm looking at the boots over here, and I see the blue goes all the way down. The reference over on the right shows something different. So we're gonna have to kind of combine the two of these references here. We'll obviously do the blonde here. We got the star in the same place. Yeah. Well, let's see it. Well then, yeah. It's this is a later start than I wanted. I was hoping to start at around 2. There was just a bunch of things, lots of stuff going on here. I'm going to make my window a little bit bigger so I can see what's going on. And we're going to make our reference, a little bit smaller. We're just going to keep it simple here. Since this is a whole new thing, I'm just going to stick with my general Reaper paints here. So we got blue liner, red liner, some brown, some sepia. Get those turned around for you so you can see them. And we got a couple of the clears out here. So we got red, yellow, blue. And I think you can see why, because, well, red, yellow, blue, those are your primers. Hey, Bethany's in the house. That's very cool. I know you kind of missed the last one there. All right. Just some water here, and we've got our typical off-whites. So let's gather these out here. And Bethany and the long-termers, they've seen these many times before. It's kind of an off-white blue. It's an off-white tinted more towards the red. Here, let's move these back. Now I might add some other colors out here, as the case may be. We'll see what happens. We also have I'm just going to go with the Leviathan blue here. So we got one contrast paint. Maybe we bring out the Flesh Tearers red. I don't know. First thing we got to do, as always, is just get rid of all this primer here. And the primer was Badger Steino Res, as usual. So this is brown liner, blue liner. Mix them together, we make a gray. And as far as the primer here, you can see, here we go, Badger Steino Res. Now I won't do what I had been doing for a while with the makeup sponges. I'm just going to go in. Again, this is just simple water, nothing fancy. We'll go in and we'll do some more work on this, but like I said, just want to get rid of the primer here. And sometimes I grab a little more of the brown. Here I'm actually going to grab a little bit of the sepia liner just to get a little variety in this. And now I'm going to go back to the brown liner. We'll just let that go. Leave it sit there and dry. And now this is where we have to determine, okay, what's red, what's blue, that sort of thing. I'm going to take some red liner and some clear red. You can see that the clear is not clear. It's really just a sort of a high intensity, pure color. No, what would you say? There's no whites or anything like that in there to sort of make it more opaque. And I'm just going to figure out what do we want to have red. So I'm thinking we'll go with the red here. Boy, it's been so long since I've painted anything that had these kind of. I paint a lot of stuff with bold colors. I mean, if you look at the Cypher Lords and some of the any of the new Warcry stuff that I've been doing, there's plenty of high saturated, bright colors there, but it's not necessarily in these such clearly defined. Okay, this is red and this is blue. So yeah, I guess, Mariah, you could definitely say that I'm a night owl. Most people just wonder, do I ever sleep? I try to when I can. There's usually not that many opportunities because we're going to be doing this here for a few hours at least. These things generally go 2.5 to 3-ish hours. Now, maybe this one doesn't. Maybe it does. I don't have to add foliage to the base or anything. At least I'm not going to. I had thought about doing, oh, what would you say, some newspapers and some debris on the base. But you know what? I think we're just going to keep it simple for right now. Yeah, this is unusual for me to be separating the colors like this. Now I'm going to look at the shoulders, and look at that. We're just mixing the two together, effectively making our own contrast paint. And if I was doing this with contrast paint, it could have been either the fleshed here is red, or maybe even, oh, what's the other one? The Blood Angel's red. One of those two. And so we'll just get this red. Now we're going to take our clear blue and we'll do the opposite. What we'll probably do is take a little bit of the blue liner, mix that in, sticking with the larger brushes. Clear blue, blue liner. You can see that sort of darkens it down, tones it down. You can use some of the Leviathan blue in there. But the clear blue, when it is watered down, it essentially acts like a contrast paint. And you can see, even now, you get a little bit of light and dark. Typically, when I'm doing my recorded videos, the formal tutorials, we just call this initial glazes and shaded base coat. And if some of the red mix is in there, who the heck cares? We're going over all this anyway. Once again, all we're trying to do is zap some primer, get that out of the way, and get to the core of this, which is our lights and darks. You get rid of that primer because, okay, let's say we paint one little area. We just do the face or maybe just the blue. We don't do the red next to it. And I see this all the time. People do it and then they go to do that next color and they go, well, this really is too light, or I didn't make it light enough or whatever. And that's just because there was nothing visually to work against. There was nothing to compare it to. So I'm just going to make sure that my chat's actually keeping up with what people... Okay, sorry, I just had to go over there and make sure. Now there's gold trim in here. We'll deal with that later. We'll just definitely mess with that later, because all we need to do right now, you can see having this blue next to the red, right away, that red that looks really dark. Now that looks really dark. Is she wearing gloves? Oh, she's wearing red gloves. Okay, didn't know that. Well, at least in one of my references she is. Yeah, both references she's wearing red gloves. So yeah, I'm looking at that red going, wow, that's pretty dark. I put the blue down here, which is not even probably the darkest blue we're going to use. And I said, wow, that red, not as dark as I thought it was. That's the value of doing this. Now, I don't know, I guess we can call it a downside, but you don't get that instant gratification. You don't get to see the face completely painted or some part of it completely done. And I understand when you can only work on something for an hour or two because I'm guessing that the vast majority of folks, if they're lucky on a regular basis, get maybe 2 hours to actually paint. You want to see something at the end of that? Well, I don't know. I'm kind of advocating if you sort of follow this method of painting, after 2.5 hours, you see a finished miniature, which, that's not horrible. So we're going to grab some of that maiden flesh. We're going to grab some red liner here. Oh, a touch of that sepia liner. We're going to make ourselves a bit of a skin tone, kind of a shadow skin tone here. Take a touch of yellow. Again, a little more of that maiden flesh. All that's there for is just to lighten things up. There we go. Gonna use a touch of that yellow in there just to make sure it doesn't get too pink. Make sure there's a little bit of water in that. No, I almost did the gloves. So we'll just hit this here. Again, getting rid of the primer. That's all we're trying to do. Now I'm going to go back to my red here and we'll just smoke these gloves real quick. Oh, let's see, Mariah just hanging out watching one screen and doing some of my work on the other. That is something that I'm hoping to try and do the multi-screen thing here because just with a few developments in the world that are going on lately, we won't dive into those too much. I'm thinking about starting the Twitch thing. It's kind of going to be, it'll be virtually done in secret because I know I have 10 followers, but I don't think I have any subscribers. So we'll try and grow that slowly. I will say, we'll call it that. We'll try and do a slow burn on that because I got to figure out how the heck that platform works. It took me long enough to figure out this YouTube thing. And I have no idea what happens when I go live on Twitch or whatever for the first time. So I thought I might do it in stealth fashion. However, I will be. What is that? You can. Even this is being recorded on my machine. So if I wanted to, I could actually take these recordings, go ahead and make a video out of them. I could edit it, I could render it, the whole thing, almost like my recorded tutorials. So that's a possibility with some of the Twitch stuff, at least for the beginning. Now, here, let's see as this dries. See what's already happened here with the blue. It's almost, how the contrast paint is supposed to work. Well, this kind of works like that contrast paint. That's the only reason I got that stuff. The only reason was because people were looking for some kind of a substitute for the clear and liner paints and overseas where they just had a problem getting a hold of them. So here we got a nice little gray. See, we got the brown and the blue together. It makes gray. Oh, look at this. We take some of that maggot white, the bluish white. We've got ourselves a blue-gray here. Oh, let's start to work in some of this because we'll let that dry. Now that this is mostly dry, we can get into here. But we don't want just one color of gray. And gray has a color to it. There's warm grays. There's cool grays. What do I mean by a warm gray? We're going to take maiden flesh. We're going to mix it into the same gray. It's going to be just as, it's a little more brown liner. It's pretty much the same value almost, but this is now a warmer gray. Let's put this down here. I'm just looking to make sure that I'm actually on camera here. So what we started with was something that's a little more towards the cool side. Now we're working towards the warm. We're gonna make it even warmer with some sepia. Some of that sepia liner, which is actually a paint that was created sort of on my request. The clear and liners, they were about to go the way of the dodo, mostly because of just the way they were named. The clear is not clear, and the liner paints are really not for lines. As you can see, I mean, have I done any lines with the liner paints? No, not at all. We have done some pretty nifty values here. I think we're getting in some lights and some darks. Now I'm gonna go back into my sepia color here. This is pretty much the same color that I was just using on the hair. Oh look, now it's being used on our sidewalk. I'm gonna paint in some extra cracks here because it looks like we have, I don't know, a shell hole of some kind. I don't know who's firing RPGs at Captain Marvel here, but maybe somebody is. Maybe somebody is. I have to say, one of the things that just really distressed me, I don't know how many years ago it was, just a few years ago, when I saw for the first time the set of gray paints. I was a set of 10 gray paints. I don't know, 50, 60, whatever, however much it cost. And it literally could have been as simple as taking some dark blue, some dark brown, mix them together. Heck, you could have just cut them with white, even. And depending on how much blue or how much brown you had an entirely different gray. And I can't make air quotes right now because my hands are full, but just imagine my hands doing air quotes as I say gray. Just pretend. And like, see, we can use the side of the brush here. We're even doing a little bit of wet blending. Why? Because we're working relatively fast. And in some ways, maybe it even looks like a dry brush. Look, we're going to add some more maiden flesh to that. It does more than just lighten the paint. It warms it up. Warms it up. Because see what we have here? It's virtually pink right there. Here it has a yellow tone, and here it's more of a bluish tone. And that's what I mean. Trying to get colors a little more interesting in areas like this. I don't know if it was. I get a lot of questions on Facebook or on the YouTube channel and such, or from the Patreon page, and people just say, well, there's just certain color I can't get anything interesting. It just looks kind of dead and boring. Well, okay, if everything is tan, did you sneak in a little green in that tan? Is the tan maybe a little more intense in some areas? You know, is it more of a pure? Is there more yellow in there? Is it almost a little more orange? Because yes, tan can have those different aspects to it. Now I just went into some brown liner here. There, I'm gonna do some of that. See how I'm just again working with the side of the brush, and see how I'm just kind of scumbling it here. If this were oil paint, I'd be doing virtually the same thing. Now, the benefit of oils is that I could be doing this for a whole lot longer than just minutes or even seconds. And look at this, I have not gone anywhere near the lightest light that I can go. So I'm going to bring a little bit of that main flesh out. Look at how much lighter I can go. But let's not forget our bluish gray here. I'm even going to take a little more blue liner here. Meanwhile, look at this. See how there's already some shading in the blue there? That's just by default. Again, a quick little glaze. That's all it was. Quick little glaze. We let the color sort of vary itself just a bit. Now look at what's happening. Yeah, you can see this here. I'm going to tilt this on its side. Maybe even take a little bit of the paint away. So what we have here is basically sort of a yellowish color. I see we're mixing into blue, and then that blue's going to mix into some brown liner. And look, we're just see how we're swirling the brush like this. Look at it, it's mixing the colors together. Look at this big old broad surface. Look at this. I do it here. So I'm just kind of rotating the brush in a circle, but I'm doing it really lightly. Who would have thought you would have had such an in-depth tutorial on painting concrete? let's take this a little further. Let's get some green in here, right? So I'm going to take some of that clear yellow, mix it with my blue, because hey, we don't have enough color in our concrete. We're going to add some green in there. Who'd have thought that concrete would be so interesting? And some people would say, well, okay, what's the deal? Why more interesting? Who the heck cares? It's concrete. Let's get to the juicy blues and reds. Well, what do you think makes those look more interesting? Not some dead gray blob, but something that maybe reflects some of the colors from the base, like we are going to get some of that green into the hair over here. And I'm even going to take, so this is basically the green from the concrete, and we're starting to lighten up areas here on the rest of the figure itself. Let's keep going with this. Let's double down on some more green in a few other areas here. Okay, I'm going to take this brush on its side, scumble it, and oh look, now I'm going to use my finger because yeah, finger painting's a thing. The joys of finger painting. Oh look, we're going to put some more here. Go back to the bluish gray. And guess what? Things even like a chunk of concrete like this or whatever this is, even this should have a touch of reflected light. Even this. Now, the red's more dry. Let's go back into those. We are going to take some of that red liner here and some of the clear red. Let's get some even deeper shadows. Even deeper shadows, because then we can go back and work in some lighter colors. In effect, I tend to start in the middle and then work out from there to either side. Work to the darker side, work more to light. So yeah, I think this plan will work reasonably well. And we can even, so we've got some of our clear red here. Now this is, every paint has, well, hopefully, not all paints do, but hopefully the paint has a unique property. The Creature Caster, Slow Fuse, Monument paints, their claim to fame is the opacity. And it doesn't matter what the color is, it could be yellow, white, ivory, whatever, purple. It's got a lot of opacity to it. And you'll probably maybe see me grab some of those where I need the opacity. What do I need right now? I actually need this to be somewhat more transparent. The nice thing about the clears, though, because they're not a, say, a contrast paint, they're not so watery. You have to come up with a term for everything. I came up with the term of a dry glaze. That's sort of what the clear paints let you do, is almost get the effect of a glaze, but not have that the wateriness, the running. That can scare people sometimes. They want to have more control over it. Well, dry glaze is way easier to keep control over. I'll say that. So I see we've got some gaps over here in our blues, so let's hit that. Looking for some more. I know we're working on the red, and all of a sudden we switch to the blue. Well, yeah, get used to it. I know Bethany and the other folks that watch the Patreon videos and my usual live sessions, they're kind of used to me going, yeah, we're going to do this, and then doing something else because the situation just calls for it sometimes. So now we've really started to establish our darks, our midtones, and how far are we into this? It's like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. Now I'm going to work in a little bit of the sepia here. Let's work in some lighter skin tones. We have sort of our own pre-made flesh tone. Want to get a little yellow into that. because skin tone just has some green. Oh, and speaking of green, you are what you wear. So if you're wearing a blue jumpsuit, guess what? You're going to have 5 o'clock shadow. Let's do the old skin test here. Not bad. Oh, runs with Caesars. No one here is complaining. I'll watch you paint concrete all day. There we go. We'll just have a day of painting concrete. And you laugh. Well, people might laugh. I don't know. But I've got armies that I'm working on where that could be a thing. There's plenty of armies where I could be painting cobblestones and concrete for quite a while. And actually, speaking of things that shouldn't be interesting to paint but actually kind of are, cobblestone. I really didn't enjoy it too much way back in the day, but now, just with some of the things that I've learned, actually, I kind of like painting cobblestone. Gives us some opportunities to do things. Now, you can see we're starting to couple of quick shots here on the face, and oh look, we have this whole convenient set of flesh tones. We can start to lighten things a bit. If it gets too light too fast, I can go back in there and tone it down. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we got some facial structure. Now, of course, every miniature line is different. Sculptors are going to approach things differently. So I have to get used to how these sculptors approached the face, the chin, the cheekbones, the eyes, how tall or how high do they make, say, the neck or whatever. Every company is just going to be different. Just kind of how that is. Just keep working on this. Build up some more of the face, but not too far. And you will notice again, people that are new, but the vets, the veterans that have been around, they know that anything that is white just doesn't get touched. There, I have off whites that I use, but as far as say a straight up white, that is only for the very, very end. Now, what the heck are these little stars? Just bear with me while I make this reference here a little bit bigger. Come on. There we go. So you can see we're starting to match. I may actually just leave that a little bit larger if you don't mind, because it's helpful. I'll shrink it back down again, I sort of promise. But for right now, it would be neat to just have that right here, since it's practically the same size and pose of what I'm painting. So we've gone pretty far there. Now I'm going to see if I can't maybe start to work in a little bit of something that's that gold trim. So I just took the sepia liner, the clear yellow, made a quick little mix here. Gonna make sure I've got some focus for you. Just give me a second here. That's better. And I want to say I found 6 different references that were pretty close to this pose. But even those 6 references, each one of them had something different. Not just from each other, but like this. See these horizontal stripes right here? None of them had that. I mean, that's understandable because yes, you want it to look like the character, but there has to be some kind of a unique aspect to it. I think the star is actually supposed to be gold also. I'll go with that. That's what I saw. And even this, it's going to look light compared to what we have already. But believe me, it's not that light. We can go further with that. And this seems like on the figure it's sculpted in as basically a double line. Now there's also a continuation here of these seams, trim, whatever they're actually called. I don't know. But I don't even know if you can see what I was painting right there. Now we'll go back to some of the red here. Look at this. This is why I advocate this kind of a palette here, because I can take that lighter red and I can go directly into my mid-tone, my lighter color, my darker color. It's all right there for me to work with. It's all right there. I can compare where I was as far as the dark part of it goes. I can see how light I've gotten. It's easier to make those adjustments, I guess, is where I'm going with that. Because believe me, we can go a whole lot lighter with this red than what we've got. But for now, we're going to, I don't want to say we're going to do that classic building where it gets a little lighter, a little lighter. It looks that way, but it's really not going to be that way. Because yeah, this is red, and yeah, there's a lot of blue, but we have to get something more than just red and blue into this. I actually have to find some ways to sneak green in my reds here. I need to sneak some red into the blue. It probably to some folks sounds really crazy right now. What do you mean red into the blue? Well, if this is shiny, what, latex or whatever, spandex, well, it kind of reflects things. You can't have those nifty little sort of shiny highlights on something and say, well, it magically doesn't reflect any colors around it. It just reflects the light. That's all. Not any colors. Now, of course, I guess superhero stuff pretty much does nuke any sort of physics or natural laws, but from a visual standpoint, we kind of need to keep some of those in mind. Which is why now I'm going to try and put a little bit of rosiness to the cheeks here. Let's see if we can't do that right here. There we go. And this is something I say all the time, is when you could do this method, you just have to be prepared that for quite a while it's just not gonna have that impact. It's not gonna, I don't want to say it's not gonna look like anything, but it can look a little weird. I won't deny that. Well, deny it, I kind of preach that it really shouldn't look like anything at the start. Yeah, you should have your basic lights and darks in there, but don't get bogged down in small little details, at least not right away. Just keep working evenly. So again, just bear with me here while I have that reference picture off to the side, because it's really easy for me to see that, and that's helpful. Gonna just start to indicate where maybe the eyes are here. And is she looking down? I think a lot of them shows some kind of blue-green eyes. What the heck, if somebody wants to say in the comments, yeah, she has blue-green eyes or she has blue eyes, just say so, because that'll help. Oh, Mariah has a question here. There's a specific light bulb color when I'm painting. Let's count the lights. Right now I'm looking through a magnifier light. So that's one. That's the primary light source. But then around me, there's two to my left, two to my right, and there's another one sort of kind of overhead, at least sort of covering the palette. Oh, and then technically my palette camera has a light on it. That's 2, 4, 6, 7 lights. Now, they're not super high powered, but because I got lights going in all direction, and they're all LED lights, every single one of them, and they're the lights that I paint by. They're the same lights I use for photographs. It's all the same equipment I even take to conventions. So if I'm at Adepticon doing a class, which, oh, actually I am doing, remember, December 6th is coming fast, that web cart, well, I'll just say save some pennies, because I'm doing some official classes for the first time. At first I thought it was 4 or 5 years, but it's more like 6 or 7 years. So yes, I will be doing, is it 3 classes, 4 classes? Heck, I don't even remember. Because if it wasn't 5 minutes ago, it was too long ago for me to remember. But one of them's oil, one of them is basing, and one of them is actually trying to do a little bit of TMM. And I'll show you some things as we go along here, some examples of other fun stuff. You can see how this is starting to now, even though we're starting to work with our yellows here, or golds, getting those a little more prominent. Like I said, it'd be tempting to just paint all of one thing, just paint the face or whatever. Well, in more ways than one, that can cause some issues for you. And you'll see just how much lighter we can go. All right, I'm going to shrink down Mrs. Reference there. And what I'm going to do is make sure I've got some here. I'm just going to adjust my focus a bit. There we go. This certainly needs to be a little lighter. So that's mostly the clear yellow mixed with a little touch of the Pro Acryl white. Actually, it's ivory. It's not white. Check that. Not white. But we definitely want to get some of the clear yellow in there. Remember I talked about how the Pro Acryls, the advantage there is the opacity. Well, heck, when you're painting yellow and you want to have a light yellow, what better way to make sure that happens than throw in something that'll give you that little extra zip of opacity that you need. And all of a sudden, what was pure chaos over here, I'm starting to see some parallel lines. And I'm just going to assume that's what they should be. We have a copy of the game, of course, but I just didn't really look at, well, we were given the go-ahead to just kind of make our own color schemes, and, well, Kathy's going to be painting several of these on her streams, and she is going to be doing some alternative colors on those. I have, what was it, Old Zoltron or whatever his name is. I'll show you that later. I got him sitting over there. He's something that I'll probably do an alternate color scheme for. Yeah, who knows? Maybe I try one of these again and do something besides just the red and blue. But I thought, at least on this one, I'll go standard color scheme with it. And this way, people can, as I go back to now some of the original sepia tone and yellow mix, you can get a little hint of just how to paint something bright like this and match a reference picture. I do a lot of that on my recorded videos for the Patreon page because there's folks watching it that, well, I don't know if they're trying to make their living doing painting, but maybe it's their army. They see something they really like somewhere, they find a reference, and they like to match it, but they just don't know really how to go about doing that, at least not in a reasonable time frame. And that's what I try and do it's called my Army Painting Series. So again, you check out the Patreon page. There's going to be a link set up in this. Once the video's over, I can do some end screens and put that in the description for you. Just check that out. And actually, I just started Series 16, believe it or not. I can hardly believe it. Looking at the go, holy smokes, 16 series. Why does that matter? Well, it matters to me because each one of those is 5 episodes long and around 13 hours of filming time. So, and that's total running time that you'll see for each one of those. So here we're doing clear red. See, it starts to not just get lighter, but the red starts to get more intense. Now I do see some difference in my references. The ones that are in the little boxes down on the bottom. Oh, we got some more questions. Oh, see ya, Mariah. Oh yeah, you can. Well, she knows that you can watch this whole thing, well, as many times and whenever you want, along with all the other live sessions. I kind of recommend that because, as crazy as it might seem, I do try to make these build off of one another. That's why I don't only use just Reaper paints or only contrast, or only oils. I try to kind of lead one into the next. Not the easiest thing to organize, but Falcon Nomad is in the house. Welcome in. I Yeah, what are we, about 30 minutes into this? 35, 38 minutes in. So we've kind of gotten past well, we're still sort of in the initial glazing and shaded base coat phase. People say, what the heck is a shaded base coat? It's sort of what you've seen play out here, where we kind of start in the middle, we start to find some of the lighter colors, but then we also continue to work with colors that are darker. People say, okay, why the obsession with starting in the midtones? Well, that's really where most of the color action happens. It's where most of your shading is. As an example, we'll say 1 to 10 is your values, light to dark. 1 to 3 and, oh, 8, 9, and 10, those are your lights and your darks. Well, that leaves 4, 5, 6, and 7. Those are your middle tones. That's a pretty large chunk of your spectrum there to work with. And it seems like midtones are flyover country for most folks. Now, people overseas, I don't know if that term might really ring true or whatever, but that might have to be t-shirt worthy or at least sticker worthy. Midtones are not flyover country. They're basically something that you speed by on your way to highlights. I mean, quite literally, people blowing by midtones just because they want to get to that boom. They want to get to that highlight. Well, highlights really aren't where the attraction is. When you're looking at things, yeah, you'll notice a spot of white somewhere. Great. But what you're going to want to look at more is something that leads you towards that highlight and sets it up. And, well, it's going to be your shadows. It's going to be your midtones. And I'm go up here, see if I missed anything else. Yeah, oh, and by the way, well, I hope maybe you're still around, Mariah. These lights that I'm using, they are not expensive. These small little lights, they should only be about between $9 and $12. And my magnifier light, now it's a 3 times magnification, not bad. That should only be about $40 on Amazon. That's it. I mean, you should be able. This whole lighting suite should be $80 tops, and that is, again, it covers photography, covers all my painting stuff. I bring them to shows because they're portable. If you look at my blog, I actually have blog posts on photography, or at least how I photograph my miniatures, and it is not a complex process. It could be. I could get snazzier equipment and do more with it, but I don't have time to turn photography itself into another painting chore because I have to photograph not hundreds of miniatures, but pretty much thousands of miniatures. All right, now that we're starting to get some lights in here, I need to think about, okay, what's going to make this shiny? Okay, yeah, some dramatic lights next to darks. That's one way. It's also how you make things metallic. But speaking of that, the other way is having things reflect colors or be tinted. which means maybe the reddish colors pointed up are going to be not just lighter, but maybe a kind of a higher saturation. So maybe I'll get some clear orange out for that. I will mention this too, and just it's something that I notice as I use other paints. So the creature caster paints dry super matte. The what I like about the Reaper clear and liners, they also dry very matte, more matte than GW paints. And I've tried the new Green Stuff World paints, and those they're a little bit more like the GW paints, in that they can have a more of a satin look to them. Again, as opposed to stuff like the Reaper paints and those Pro Acryls, which I mean the shine, there's no shine at all. So now we gotta start thinking about some reflected light here. Initially, I'll just do it in the form of a somewhat lighter mid-tone red, but we gotta work some of that gray color in there. Gotta figure out a way to do that somehow. So we'll just, again, we gotta get away from the red. Let's get towards the blues here because, well, we want to build evenly, and we're gonna go back to our blue mix there. That's got some of the Leviathan blue, the clear blue, touch of the blue liner. And where I think I need some darks, we're going to add those. And then we can, just like we did with the reds and even with the yellows, then we go in and we can lighten those up, adding some of the maggot white in places to get more of a bluish look, a pure blue look. But then if we, let's say we use some of the maiden flesh, it dulls it down. And that might be that would probably be the color we use to lighten the blue as we get towards, say, the where the concrete is now. This is more of a, again, straight up clear blue. Look at how much more intense this will be right here. So that's still a mid-tone. It looks so bright. Not just a mid-tone. But what I do want, and now we're gonna make, oh, Fruity Toots. Hey there. How you doing? We're gonna make this bigger because, yeah, look at that. We're just right next to each other. We are gonna see if we can't very quickly here work in some of this lighter blue, and then I will maybe mark a few areas where there's just some extra, well, sheen, for lack of a better term. So here I'm gonna have to reflect that red. There's this big old red, whatever the heck it is. It's almost like she's playing flag football. I can now for the next several minutes, I'm just gonna have Jerome Bettis in my mind playing flag football and dragging that guy halfway across the field. So now we're just like we did with the reds, starting to sneak in a little bit of mid-tones with these blues. This is another spot over here I'm going to have to try and reflect some of that red. It's going to be tricky, I have to say. I think that's the other reason I wanted to just keep this in the original color scheme, because people are just going to want to know, well, okay, yeah, blue and red, whatever, but I wanted to have more than just blue and red. If I completely change up the color scheme, well, people won't get to see that. I know it seems like when people are doing their Twitch streams and stuff, oh, here, let me shrink this down again. I know they're trying to make them entertaining and such. There's music and dancing and all the kinds of fun stuff going on. I try to make these, well, more educational. I'm trying to maybe show a certain principle here. Like, okay, it's a little bit lighter now. And you notice we haven't gone to any kind of a small spotter brush or anything like that yet. No need to. Heck, I could have been doing this with my giant craft brushes. But there's the one thing is there's so many things floating around here that it does make it a little easier to actually get inside those places. All right, again, gonna take some more of that maggot white. And all this is just to lighten this up. So I can, and this is what I mean about having it right there on the palette. I can, again, take this down. Let's get some brighter highlights in places. What we're going to do is just kind of mark these down, and then we're going to go back around those. There's some folds here that I just noticed. Again, looking for some quick little linear and spot highlights here that you might see, because again it should be more shiny. So let's see what we did here. That's it, to try and get things a little bit more reflective, a little more shiny here. Let's do that. So you can see I'm starting to add some additional lights in places. We're going to have to do some reflected light here. So let's do that. Can you see it good? Sometimes I pause a little bit just to make sure you can see what the heck I'm doing. That actually had a little bit of red into it. We definitely need some reflections here. That can't just be dark blue down there. Now I know you can barely see what the heck I'm doing in that part. All right, let's do the same thing up here. Let's get some lights, get some folds here. Now, as far as the assembly on these things goes, it was a challenge. Now, since I assembled these, I believe they on the website now there's a little more reasonable instructions that actually there's like numbers on the sprues, and yet there was nothing to tell you what the heck those numbers meant. But now I believe there is something on the website where the assembly or the sprue numbers correspond to some instructions. Thank goodness. And I did not use plastic glue. Other folks we know have used plastic glue, I guess with success. But I've run into other kits. I know Rubicon, great kits, but because they're sort of hybrids, plastic glue does not work on them whatsoever. In fact, a lot of super glues don't even work on them. So I was a little paranoid, and I just went straight to super glue. I didn't even try using plastic glue. No big deal. It obviously, the super glue worked because it's not falling apart as I paint it. Just gonna make a quick check, see if there's any. To ask how we're doing here. It's been pretty wild. The YouTube thing has been a distraction. I gotta say, one of the reasons. Well, technically, I was more like 40 minutes late because I was watching yet another legal-oriented video, trying to figure out just what's going on because this is changing by the hour. So that's a little bit distracting there. I've also been, yes, see how we're starting to now figure out, okay, where are those bright striations going to be? like so. And then I will, once I kind of figure, okay, where's the lightest areas going to be here, then I can start to work back in with some other colors. We're sort of sketching this out, for lack of a better term. Just kind of sketching in the details here. Here, let's go a little more here. Sorry, I just shook the palette there. Oh, okay, I did assemble and prime. Well, I primed today earlier dozens of figures, more things to. Actually, this was one of them, but I primed Mantic figures because we're going to be doing a whole bunch of tutorials on Mantic stuff, how to multi-base, huge monsters that will paint in oils. So a lot of that going on. I got a bunch of Lord of the Rings figures that I am prepping. Tons of those because I want to use oils. I want to do tutorials on white. So I've got one of the new Gandalf miniatures. And that's really going to be helpful because, geez, I get so many questions about how do you paint white? Well, hopefully that will answer, or at least provide some answers. Might generate more questions, I don't know. So I think you can see how we're starting to, this is getting a little bit more shiny. Now, okay, we worked with the blue. Let's go back to our reds and let's introduce, this is another new clear. It's one of, I think, 4 new clears that Anne generously made over at Reaper because Anne is the alchemist who makes all these fun things for us to use. So now I've got some orange here that I can play with. Still working with a larger brush at this point because I'm still trying to, again, figure out what's going to be, what needs to be hit with these lightest tones. Oh, with the Tutti Fruits spot there. And the hybrid plastic using Zap plastic Zap. Okay, that's Zap plastic. I'm gonna have to write that down because well, I don't think I have any Rubicon kits right now, but there's definitely some more that I want to get because they have some nifty crews for some of their vehicles, especially maybe some of the, here we go, some of the Hanomags and some of the SPGs and stuff. So I'll remember that. Oh geez, no, it's, again, I've been watching lots and lots of videos on this, and they're after someone else besides me. Uh, I look at my analytics, and no one under the age of 24 has ever watched one of these. So I believe that's probably one of their, that's their first line that they're going to go to, is just, okay, what do the analytics say? Who's watching your stuff? Now I will probably just as we try and figure out what the heck all of the what they're trying to say because it's all super vague right now. I'll probably stick with my usual things, the Lord of the Rings stuff that just can't be misconstrued as other things. I'll just kind of leave it at that. We'll stick to some of the safer things. And of course, too, I want to say at least 85% of my videos are unlisted because those are for the patrons or just things that I want to keep as a more of a separate library. So that's, again, if they can't see it because they don't have access to it unless I give them or someone access to it, they can't see it. So you can see now is that the orange that gets in here, it's going to really start to stand out against that nice rich blue, which also has a little red in it. You say, well, how the heck did you get red in there? Leviathan blue, remember that contrast paint that we first started with? That actually has some, what would you say, some crimson in it. It's got some little touch of red to it. And that little touch of redness helped turn our initial blue a little bit more towards the red. Oh, Bethany, there she is. Reaper, we're going to rename the clear paints. I don't think so. It's just my pet peeve. Uh, I'll just say it right now. Companies tend to get a little too creative with their paint names, and by creative I mean they should just, well, I sort of like the creature caster method of it's it's purple, yeah, or look at this, dark gray blue. Those three words tell you what it actually is. Calling it sassafras moonshine, that doesn't tell me anything. I'm not quite sure what, but I'm sure there's probably a pink color named sassafras moonshine. Who knows? Probably right now, since every 30 seconds a new paint line is created, somebody's creating the paint color sassafras moonshine. That should be a hashtag. Not quite sure if that's a seasonal ale or something like that, but well, I guess it is. Well, that's what lack of sleep will do to you. You come up with sassafras. What was it? Sassafras moonshine. Gee, I'm gonna have to make a label for that. That it's a special ale that you drink while painting, or or watching these videos. Some might say they need that ale just to survive the videos, but now you can see I've grabbed myself a somewhat smaller brush. We're starting to seek out some details here, at least something more with this kind of a yellowish orange here. Now I could just again take the Pro Acryl orange if I wanted this to be more opaque, but I'm still counting on some level of transparency to these things. And you're going to see there's still so much more that we can do with some of these highlights. We're only just now, we're getting in a, this is a light middle tone. Here, I'll put that next to, so that's next to white. It's like we got a long, long ways to go. Now people say, all right, how the heck do you highlight red without it turning pink? Well, okay, we just added some of that white to it, but we're going to put in some orange, and that's going to keep it from turning pink. Because if you keep adding yellow, yeah, it's going to get lighter, but then it's going to sort of sneak into the orange realm. We don't necessarily want that. Now, lack of shape here, especially since that's supposed to be shiny. I also have to follow where, see what these lines here in the blue where things are brighter. I'm going to also start to think about some reflected light because most of the references that I saw showed this as being kind of on the shiny side. Now I'm going to grab me some yellow here with that white, mix it in with the red. See just how light we can go. It's going to actually be sort of like our skin tone here. Oh, let's see. Falcon has a. Yeah, that is the strangest thing that you know. Before you'd say, okay, no swearing, no drinking, no whatever, no references to certain things. But that's like you say, with their people are kind of they're dirtying up their channels basically to try and stay away from to not run afoul of these things. And I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing here. Uh, if I disappear, If all of a sudden I'm led away in chains on some kind of classic TV news perp walk or something, I guess you know what happened to me. But otherwise, I mean, should I really just? And I know people that have shut down their channel. They put all their videos to private or whatever, and they're not making any new stuff. They're just completely shutting down. I just don't know if that's really the best way to go. I mean, who knows? Maybe they come after me. The black helicopter lands on the front lawn, which it better be more like the size of a drone because there's not that much room on a front lawn that's more the size of our living room. Now, of course, I live just 9 blocks away from Midway Airport, so aircraft landing in weird spaces like houses, not unheard of. All right, now we're just see. We're gonna just like we did on the blue. Now I'm gonna try and find some of those really bright highlights, and then I can work back towards the midtones. Remember we talked about working dark or starting in the middle, working out towards the edges. Well, what's going to happen here is I start working out towards the edges and then I come back to the middle. And if people are not confused by that at all, well, think of the oil paint stuff where not only we're thinking about that, but we are also thinking about how thick the paint is, how thin it is. Oh yeah, let's do on the knuckles here. Up here, we gotta get some here, but I don't want to. Well, oh, that's right. This is not resin. I was just about to say it, but I don't want to really lean too much on this. I'll snap that resin right off. But and the nice thing is, it is plastic. It's not rustic. The worst material of all time for miniatures, where it's got all the worst properties of plastic and all the worst properties of resin and none of the good ones. All right, so I think that is helpful there. So we've got some stuff standing out nicely. I am going to see what I can do with some even more substantial lights on my blue there. We're almost making this see kind of like a bit of a gemstone there. Look at that. Well, if they come in taser, get it on camera, well, yeah, that the tasing experience, well, just I think I almost tased myself once, uh, cutting some electrical lines in the house when somebody told me that they had actually shut off the power to it. All I know is that I was wearing welder's gloves and the channel locks that were in my hand were like half blown apart. I had a kind of a new hairdo after that also. It was sort of like a cartoon. There was smoke. I see we're starting to bring up some of this. Let's go back to the face. We kind of worked on that and let that go. I'm going to uh, Bethany had a question. Started painting there only two acrylic lines, horizon and horizon. That's interesting. Well, now then you remember this used to be a Reaper paint jar right here. This is how Reaper paints came in a jar with a twist top. They did not come in those dropper bottles. I'll just call them dropper bottles. I could use a more colorful metaphor, but we're not trying to dirty up this channel just yet. So I'll just say dropper bottles. They are not my favorite things in the universe. And people that know me, they know that dropper bottles and me don't really get along, like at all. I'm going to see if I can't get a couple of highlights in her here. Let's drop in. Now, of course, I have to hold this facing away from the camera, sadly, to try and get this bit painted right here. Now, let's start to do some things on the face here. Let's bring out some more. We just kind of left the lips sort of two-dimensional. We are going to give them a third dimension now. At least we hope we are. There we go. And got to do some stuff here on the cheekbones as well. Because we got all that red. It's going to be reflecting some red on here. You are what you wear. Yeah, if she was wearing lime green, well, guess what would be reflecting on her face? Lime green. You got it. That's just how it works. So when you go to grab that really interesting, fun t-shirt, maybe look in the mirror and see what it does to the bottom half of your face. You may not like what you see. It may be a kind of cosplay that you don't want to be doing. Yeah, you don't want to be the Green Lantern just by wearing a green shirt. And sorry, I just moved my palette camera here. Oh, you're still using some of those. Oh, what was my favorite? Walnut brown was one favorite, and I think it was amethyst blue was my other favorite. Absolutely loved it. Now, I think I've found a few, oh, what would you say, modern day versions of the amethyst blue. Actually, Leviathan blue, sort of, not, I guess I can mix some things together to sort of create the old amethyst blue. All right, we got to do something down here because this is just not, no lights down here. Now, we talked about reflections. We'll go back to the face, but we got to get some red reflections in places here. So we're going to go back to this original sort of mid-tone red. Can you see it here? Okay, I'm going to have to rotate this around. And right in there, let's thin this down. I've got to get some red. See it? See that right? I'm trying to point to it. See that in there? Just some red right there. Oh, guess what? We're going to put some red right there. We're going to put some here. And you can see how kind of watery that is. I'm going to get some here. And certainly here. This is why I wasn't worried when the red hit our blue. So see what's happening there? Oh, look, we're even going to reflect some of that here. And the reflections should be, I don't want to basically take the exact same red that's on, say, well, her flag from flag football, whatever this thing is. It's got to be toned down a little bit, and it should also be a little bit darker than what the original is. Now we'll go back in with some of the blue here, and then we'll sort of do a little bit of blending like there. So see how we've got some reflection there? That's the kind of stuff that you need if you want this to be more convincing as shiny. Because you can artificially just kind of go, oh yeah, there's lots of bright highlights, lots of really hard edges and stuff. But if there's no reflections, people are going to look at it and go, there's just something weird. Why is that not quite what I think it should be? Now, this will be even trickier here. So we got look at this, we're mixing the blue and the red together. Why are we doing that? Because we are trying to sneak in a little blue into our red. It's kind of like Reese's peanut butter cups. We are now about to get some peanut butter in that chocolate. Look at that. And see how it is? It's in the reds, in the shadows there. Now let's do that over here on our blues. Let's do that over here on whatever these are, on the knees. Let's do some of that in our shadow areas here. I'm gonna maybe take some of that, put some of that into here. Again, trying to find ways to work in some of these reflections, as many as possible. But, and I think we say this a lot here, sometimes too much is too much, and it gets to be too much in a hurry. So you just cannot. See, we just added some blue here. You go too crazy with reflections, it's just like, oh, rust and chipping, right? Aren't those the typical things that people sort of abuse? No, Fruity Toots. Question for me: Army Painter Pledge give you access to the lower tiers? Yes, it does actually. As soon as you do the Army Painter Pledge level, you get absolutely everything. So now you're already a patron, so you'll be getting a message with a boatload of links, and some of those videos you've already seen because they're from the lower tiers. The whole reason behind that is that you need to see all of them, because just like here where we're trying to build, one lesson to the next, well, some of the individual snow basing maybe that I did, say on a Song of Ice and Fire figure, well, all of a sudden now we're using it on something else. Now here we're adding some, again, some reflected light here, but it's toned down by comparison. Now we're going to go back the other way here, see if we can't. Now it's time to maybe smooth out some areas. So yeah, when you do if you're brand new and you do the Army Painter Pledge level, you're going to get links to, oh my gosh, now it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 230 hours worth of videos. It's crazy. But they're targeted. So you've got, oh what, 16 series times 5. That's just army painting right there. You've got what, 27 Dark Sword episodes that you can watch. Lots of different, just individual basing things. What was it? The Reaper Giant Dragon, where I worked on the base. So I'm going to use the blue to get a little separation in here now, even though it's in the kind of where the red is. I think that's another thing too, is that people would just, okay, we'll take a darker red. No, I'm actually taking some of the mid-tone blue here and using that to create a little separation in some of these lines. And then too, I'm sure, well, Tutti Fruits, Bethany, all of the veterans of previous videos, they know that I say, look, you can spend 20 hours painting this thing and refine and refine and refine. That's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. Maybe you need this for a game tomorrow. So you take what you got here, you play your game, stick her back on the dead Reaper paint jar, and you paint some more. Because, well, why not? There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't necessarily have to be done right away. So I'm really glad to have put some of that, like the blue in there, in that dark area. But many thanks to Tutti Fruits and Bethany and all the patrons, because there wouldn't be any army painting series without that. I wouldn't be able to do it, because that is well, just the filming itself takes longer than 13 hours because they're setting everything up. And heck, even this video, I started setting this area up this morning for this hours ago, practically 20 hours ago. I started work getting things ready to be able to film this. Now, we talked about maybe adding some grays to our blue. Well, what better way to do that than take some of our original grays that we used in the concrete, see if we can put those here, maybe even in our reds. going to try and get this on the underside right here, over here. The shoe, of course, if it is a shoe. I don't know if it is or I don't know if it is or not. Here, let's get a little of this gray in here. We talked about that. I don't know if you can see much of that right there, but we'll do it anyway. We'll lighten this up now. We've been using a really dark gray. It's a testament to just how dark we got with our blue in those initial phases. Here, let's again try and get some of that also on these reds here. Because it's gonna, I don't want it to look necessarily like metal, but we have to, I mean, even if it wasn't shiny, even if it was just cloth, still be affected by the colors around it. I know that was a conversation that I was having with a few folks that notion that even cloth or skin reflect colors. It's not just metal, because they were under the impression that literally just only metal reflects color and nothing else. That is certainly not the case. Just look at yourself in the mirror. Now, I'm going to try and get a little more reflected light on the arms here. Like so. Yeah, that's just kind of dead in there, not doing a whole lot. I don't know if you can, I think you can see it. And actually in here, I need to get some, it's all just dark there. We still have our initial, and this needs to be lighter too. We just have the initial things that I just dropped in here with those blues. So let's hit those and make those a little more exciting. I am going to take some of the blue liner, some Leviathan blue. We will mix some of our red with that. And on the gloves here, we're going to get some separation on the fingers. Like you do. Because remember we started to use a little more of the, say, the orange and the yellows to highlight that. By using a bluish purple now to get some separation. It's not just darker. It's not black lining or anything like that. We need to have a little bit of a color change, and that's a cooler color next to all that warm. Let's see what we can do around the eyes here. Time to get back to that. And what I generally like to do when you get to things like the eyes, you need eyebrows, you need the eyelids, and instead of kind of painting all those separately, you can see we're just sort of doing a massive, well, I don't know if that's quite the term for it, but we're hitting it with a fair amount of just a broad application here. No, we're not trying to turn her into like Catwoman or something like that. It's so much easier to just paint in all of these darker tones like that. And remember, we got our flesh tone, our lighter skin tone just sitting over here. Then, once that's been set up, we can go back in with these somewhat lighter colors, and we just cut into it. So the lighter I get with this, the more. Let me make my picture a little bit bigger here. You know, I don't want to go too much with blue there. We'll just make the I'll just go a little lighter with this. I'm going to get me a slightly different brush here. All right. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. And see, as I put this lighter color in here, by default, I get an eyelid and an eyebrow. Instead of trying to paint those in, because it never goes the way you want it to. It's always some little thing goes haywire. So much easier just to put the light color in between, and you get just a much sharper line, and it takes so much less time to deal with. Now I do want that to be, yeah, I'm going to lighten it up, but I want to actually get some almost like a greenish color under there, if possible. And there. Now I can go in, and I still have some of my original just applications of lighter skin tones that I put in here. I haven't gone crazy into this. Let's start to add a little more here. Because we've done a lot of development of these things. Let's start to develop some parts of the face. And there are some greenish tones here in the face. I don't know if you can see them or not. But fortunately, we were able to work those in. There's just so much blue around this. We have to have that. See, this is where I can soften some things. Yeah, we'll do sort of a similar process on the blues and the reds there on here. Like I said, it's easier to just kind of mark where things are and then come back later. Just do some indications of what you want, and then just like this, go back in and see where I can go even with some lighter colors, a little more of the maiden flesh in there. The colors all nice and unified because we took colors from every major section of this and sort of spread them around. Here, let's get the forehead a little bit lighter here. And if I see something where there's just too harsh of a transition, I can go in and just modify that a bit. Let's see if we can't do something with the eyes now. I don't know, bluish green. Let's just take some yellow, take some blue here. Maybe a little more of the blue. That's just the clear blue and the clear yellow. Let's see what we can do for eyes on this. So there's one. There's the other. And you kind of want to make sure they're both looking in the same direction. That is helpful. I'm going to try and get a boost on the eyeliner here. Just in a few strategic places, usually towards the corners. Again, looking for some more separation. So this is the Leviathan blue that we're working with here, because we've added a lot of lighter colors and midtones. I'm going back to a little bit of my shadow here. Now I need to make this bigger here so I can see what in the world's going on with the So each one of these is a little bit different as far as how they represent that little star pattern. Let's see what if I can just use some sepia liner here, a little bit of red liner with it. Can you see that? Yeah. I don't even know how many points this star has. I'm assuming maybe 5, I don't know. Maybe 6. I'm just kind of guessing. Again, I've never read comic books or anything like that. I believe, I know I saw I don't know, was it a year or two ago, whenever the Wonder Woman movie came out, we saw that. But I have not seen any of the other superhero movies or anything like that, so I'm very much in the dark about that. So you'll just have to forgive me for my lack of knowledge on that particular subject. A little bit like doing all that Song of Ice and Fire stuff, having never seen the show or read the books. Now I'm looking also, yeah, the hair has to be light, but also needs to have some dark too. Okay. Yeah, hard to believe that in just a few days here, well, a few days, what is it, Tuesday? Yeah, just a couple of days, it's going to be Thanksgiving. That's scary. We had a break in the 9-degree weather here, and not something I was expecting to be seeing. Christmas decorations all over the place. A little bit of a glaze here over the top of that. Because yes, you want some linear things, but you don't want it just to be, oh look, here's just a line of paint. I'm trying to mask that a little. Gonna see if I can't do a touch of reflected light here somehow on the underside of the chest here. So even here, there's also some folds that I need to maybe get a little more. And here, again, some where basically the latex is sort of reflecting against itself. I know that sounds a little crazy, but that's sort of what it is. I think you can see it. I'm just trying to make sure it's not blocked. Sometimes it is. Oh, and I see we need some lights here on these parts, like so. Aha, that fold definitely right there. I was just looking a little flat. Same here. I also need, I'm going to get some of this almost kind of a purple right here. Looking to get a little separation there. I'm going to actually go with more of this, a little bit on the even lighter side. And can you see what I'm about to do right there? Actually adding in basically a red middle tone right there. It is not gonna, people aren't even gonna look at this and go, wait a minute, look at that red there. They're just gonna, they won't even notice it. It's gonna register. I always say it registers as a certain color, and that's what'll happen. It's going to register as all blue, just like when I do my pink and turquoise and stuff, and my and greens and my metals. When you look at it, the brain just sort of mashes it all together and makes it gray. I kid you not, it really does. But when you look at it closely and analyze it, you say, man, there's greens in there, there's turquoise, there's purples, pinks, all kinds of fun stuff going on. And I will take some of my clear red here, and this is where we start to kind of go back and forth. Oh, hey, Oliver, how's it going? Oh, and hey, Albert. Oh, yes, it's been a little while. I'm just going to catch up to the chat here. Oh, and Fruity Toot's going to get some priming done. Well, cool. Thanks again for stopping by. And, well, like I said, I always appreciate patrons. It really does make a huge difference in all this. So, yeah, there's still a little, yeah, it's 4 o'clock here now. There's still a ways to go with this. We'll keep hammering away at this. I didn't think it was going to be 4, but yeah, I did get a later start than I wanted to. All right, let me see what I can do up here. I'm sort of darkening it down with a few glazes of red so that I can sort of lighten it back up again. I know that seems a little crazy, but let's see if we can't get a somewhat darker color on the cheekbones here. No, I want it to be rosier than that. That means a little less of the yellow, a little more of the just the straight up red liner there. And now this is again where I'm trying to work in a little bit of the touch of the red reflecting onto that latex. See where it happens right there, touch of it there, and another touch of it right there. There's some other places we can do that. And then we now need some lighter colors up here, I think. Yeah, I don't want to necessarily call them extreme highlights, but they kind of have to be even more extreme because we haven't really messed with really light highlights on some parts of the red, and we'll try and do that. Now, again, we're going to grab just a touch of yellow to make sure they don't get pink on us. Where should those go? I'm going to say there. We have some shiny effects in many other places, but we need them here too. But oh, I also need some lighter skin tone, and that just happens to be a handy dandy light skin tone. There we go. I'm going to even go more with some of the maiden flesh here. Let's get some more highlights on the cheekbones here. We worked on our eyes and everything else. This is another way to help bring those out. There we go. Let's see if I can't. There, I need some light in the nose, and I gotta actually get some light on the nostrils here. Don't know if you can even see that, but it had to be done. The upper lip also needs to be lighter here too. Like that. Chin, at least the point of the chin, definitely needed to be lighter. So I think we've been able to do a lot here. I'm going to take some of the orange and yellow now, and this is not so much for the red, but some of these areas of the gold trim, like here. I really don't know. In fact, that the interior of that star thing, I may just leave that and just paint that off camera so I can get my reference together. As much as I do enjoy this format here, the way that everything's laid out, the one thing it does do, it doesn't give me a whole lot of space for reference pictures. Now, once again, we're starting to get into some of the little bit of shiny highlights here. Almost make it like it's metal. Some of the same stuff that we're doing here on the blue, now we're going to start doing that on these areas, on our gold trim and such. And again, that's the creature caster ivory. So it gives it some of that extra little bit of opacity that we need to really make that stand out. Here, let's get a few snappy highlights on the edges of these gloves. Yeah, we're missing that. I was wondering why some parts just don't look the way I was thinking. That's because we're missing some highlights. Speaking of which, we got to get some. This should be interesting. We need to do it on the knees here. That's how I got that reflected color in there. I don't want to mess with that. Also, there's some edges that need to happen here. Like there. And I know this needs to be developed much more. So I'm going to go back into my lighter red here. Much lighter red. And I need to actually gray this down. So this is sort of geez, like a pinkish gray here. And we're going to actually tone that down. We're going kind of the opposite way here. Man, we need bright red everywhere. It's bright red. Sort of, except where it's trying to reflect some of that gray of this stone. Ooh, let's go back into this lighter red here. And I'm trying to... There. It's the same thing like we did here. It's almost like we're highlighting gemstones. But not. Just gonna see where I've got this. There's a lot of tension here. There should be those brighter highlights. And by tension, I mean where the cloth is being sort of stretched in a certain way or whatever. And also, the other thing is these little dots like that. These little points of light can also help indicate that sort of hard surface there. Or something that's shiny there. So see, we're doing this kind of in lines here. It's going to go in a row. We've got to get some of these lighter highlights on the gold here on the back. So along the neck there. You have to be patient with this. It's weird. It's a fast method of painting, of course, but it's also one that requires patience because you're not remember what this looked like in the beginning. You did not see all of these things happening. They just you have to know that eventually these details are going to come out like this. You know, just a couple little touches here and then all of a sudden this really starts to emerge. Because that just kind of looked like a whole lot of before, and all of a sudden now there's a whole lot of wow. Now we're going to go back to our uh, concrete piece, whatever that is, and now that we know what we have as far as lights and darks on the main figure, we can start to maybe drop some highlights on this too. At least highlights are a little bit brighter than what we started with, especially along this top edge here. And I can even use some of those on her boots, shoes, whatever they are. I want to get me some reflections on this too. That's going to be an interesting little challenge, but we'll tackle that after we drop some highlight magic on this. Here, just going to get some yellow into this now. And we'll make some brighter things happen down here. So again, this is the Marvel Crisis Protocol. This is Captain Marvel. And we've been using pretty much just Reaper clear and liner paints with a few creature caster colors in there. Now I promised you some cracks here. Let's paint some of that in there. I'm not even going to bother throwing brown liner up. Wildwood is that's the GW contrast paint that I like to use as a substitute for brown liner. The Leviathan blue essentially substitutes for the blue liner. So here, let's make some more interesting cracks here out of these ones that were sculpted in. Just something that makes maybe a little more sense than these big old lines right here. Let's expand off of that. I don't know, to me it lends a little more sense of scale to the figure too, because you sort of know what cracks in a sidewalk are size-wise. You can sort of relate to that. Yeah, I could have had glued some extra rocks or whatever onto the or rubble or something like that. Like I said, I was really more thinking about keeping things simple. Just was thinking simplicity here. And that, again, I'm not doing the black lining at all. That is just taking some of my dark there. Like we're going to do right here. We're going to add that. Because we've done some of we've added in lights to make those sort of striations in the blue and everything else. But now we're going to go back to adding darks. Just going to try and get some more definition here. And you know, that is just going to be dark down in there. Yeah, that works. Let's hit a few darks in here. I'm thinking with cosplay and stuff, I think I'm seeing there's like suits or whatever that people can wear that have these highlights painted in. So instead of it actually being latex or whatever. It's really more like a some kind of stretchy fabric type thing. But the way it's kind of highlighted and such or whatever, it's almost like they're wearing a painting. All right, I'm gonna see if I can't guess at what this star should be like here. It's gonna Again, I'll do that and then I'll just clean it up later. But let's get some of the orange in here like we did before. And that's gonna go in here. I might even throw a little bit on the face too. It kind of indicates, yeah. Let's do some more. Just trying to make the cheekbone and the side of the face look like it's being impacted by all of the red here that's up on her shoulders. This also could use some highlighting here. Oh, let's get some more definition in the hair. I think we have enough lights on that here. Sort of a bit of a mid-tone. Yeah, this also needs, I'm going to say I need to get some highlights going right here. The upper part of the shoulders. And I think even here too, yeah. I still need to make these. They're a bit fuzzy here. That is, yeah. I think what I need to do is I just needed to get my dark in there. And now, yeah, now I can go in with some of this stuff and seek out some more like that. Okay, so I gotta get that. This needs to be this lighter gray color. See if we can get that work in here. Sorry, the palette has kind of wandered around a little bit. So yes, this normally should be red, but it's got to reflect that concrete color, and we're just going to try and do that right now. And same goes for the blue. Same goes for the blue. And we've got that side worked out pretty well. We need to do this side. And I am going to see, can you, oh, it's blocked by the hanging piece of fabric. Unfortunately, I'm basically trying to get some, now you'll be able to see it. So I'm adding a little bit of, get some reflected light in here. Because we can. This also needs something here, and I'm going to say that needs this gray. And just sort of give me that indication of reflected light here. I'm going to go a touch lighter. And then, guess what? We're going to reflect her shoe right there. Speaking of reflections, I need one here. And I think I want one right here too. And these are the crazy things that I don't know if it's crazy or whatever, but these are the sort of things that I see on those. I just do an Instagram thing and look for cosplays of Captain Marvel, and you'll see an awful lot of these sort of like onesie suits that are actually just stretchy, almost like yoga pants fabric or something. And you will see that same thing. I'm sure they have the same thing like for, well, whatever male superheroes also have that same thing where they kind of give you the impression of muscles, but there's no padding or anything like that. It's just the shading that they use on these things. Kind of gives the impression that there's more at work. This right here definitely needs, I'm going to go back into my blue here because that's just kind of devoid of shade, and that should be catching some kind of a light right here. And yet there's none, so we are going to work on that right now and change that. We're going to go with some of the, that's the maggot white there. It's kind of a bluish white. It's mixed in with the clear blue, and what we're trying to do is right in here, work some of this in right over that hip and then into the rib area. There's no reflected light in here. We're adding it everywhere else. Why the heck is there now an area where there's none? Same thing on the interior of the arms here. What I will do, I'm going to grab some of the clear blue. I'm going to bring it down over here. I'm going to mix some of that with this. This is the, again, the creature caster ivory. My goal is here is to have sort of a pure light blue, because we've mixed in so many other colors with it. It's starting to sort of deaden down a little bit. There. Now this area dried a little bit. I can see better what's going on. And I also needed that, like I said, that more intense blue. We're now going to go a little bit lighter with it. Yeah, we needed that. Just, it's like, wait, how could you have this raised surface here? And yet the areas that are not raised are technically brighter and more lightly highlighted than the raised area. It made no sense. So I had to make an adjustment there. Again, that's why I employ this method, because it does allow me to make those type of adjustments. I can always constantly make changes along the way. I can add freehand and say, I don't really like it, and then it goes away without really having spent a lot of time screwing around with that freehand. This is also the point where I can start to do more in the way of, say, refining things. Sort of like this, where I say, you know what? I have to get a softer edge here. It's okay to have one part of it, one point of it that's sort of sharp or whatever, but there has to be, like here, there needs to be some, I'm going to go with some blue here. Again, it's red, but what am I doing to get some midtones in there? I actually just threw in some blue. And we're going to do the same over here. Can you see what's happening right there and right there? Back of this glove, we're actually highlighting it with the same light blue color that we're using on, and again, going to do that here too. Now, who's to say that's also not some of maybe the sky color being reflected in there? So I'm going to go a touch lighter even. A couple of these. Sometimes you end up hitting the most obvious highlight areas and then you kind of forget the less obvious ones. I mean, for me, especially the less familiar that I am with something like this, just not familiar with this genre, so I'm just having to really feel my way through it. And like I said before, I apologize for my lack of knowledge about the superhero thing and all that. It's not my gig. I thought that's actually sort of helpful in a way because okay, then maybe for someone that doesn't know a bunch about Bolt Action or Cruel Seas or Lord of the Rings or Warhammer Sigmar 40K whatever, then maybe they'll be maybe a little more willing to dive into those waters. Again, just sort of taking some of the blues that we've used up here and bringing them down to the ground level. I do want to get a few more lights on the ribs here somehow. I don't want to lose some of those original nifty darks that we had, so I'm going to go at that a little bit slowly. Oh, Bethany says she has to go. Very cool. I don't know how the whole Thanksgiving holiday stuff is going to affect, so I will try and, what's today? Monday? I'll try and do one, I think, Wednesday night. It may not be quite as late for you there, so I know sometimes that affects you. If it's a little too early, kind of messes you up, so I apologize in advance. But thanks for stopping by as always. Man, I guess the other reason I wanted to do this is I've never had a chance to really do sort of an all spandex type thing ever before. So always a first time, I guess, for everything. Like to get some of this. See if I can't do some bright things in this section of her. I don't know. I just keep thinking of that whole flag football reference. Haven't been able to stop. So I'm going to follow along with my later highlights in the white here. I'm going to try and get a few little sparkly lights there again. Try not to make it look like metal, but it's got to be, it has to have a shine to it. And this certainly needs to be lighter here. Gonna see what I can do on the face to get some more dramatic lighting on that too. Always try and give some kind of expression to the figure. Now I'm gonna actually, believe it or not, got some of this crazy green color here. Let's see where we can put that. I think a bright green color naturally goes to blonde here, which is going to drive people insane. And I'm even going to use it on some of the gold trim here. And people just say, what in the world, why are you doing that? Well, there's no better way to contrast with, say, a reasonably bright saturated red than with some kind of super saturated green. It'll still be, when people look at it, they'll still say, yeah, that's gold, whatever. Well, even though there's green in it. And now I'm going to get some of this onto my concrete in a way here. Couple of shots of it here. A few over here. Then, so I've got these cracks here. What we'll do is give those a little bit more. See, I don't want to say we're highlighting them, but I guess in a way, yeah, you could just pretty much call it that. I certainly don't want to do that too much because it is just the ground after all. It is just the ground. I could take some weathering powders and that would create an extra little bit of a texture difference there. It would kind of make it look like dirt. We can paint in dirt, but there's nothing like, well, some leaves or whatever. I could use some of the cut leaves on this. But I just think for now I might just leave it straight up as it is and not add things. I try to mess around as little as possible with these after the fact because if you see a picture of it and it doesn't look anything like what you saw as a painter here in the video, well, what'd you get? You saw some of it, but what about that nebulous part you didn't see? So I do try to avoid that. Sometimes it's unavoidable because there's just things I can't show on camera. I have to, the miniature's got to be pointed a certain way because I'm right-handed. That has actually happened. Odd enough as that sounds. I'll go back into some of this. Again, the clear blue here. It's one of my favorites. Well, all the clears, I really do enjoy all of them. I'm just going to go back in here. There's some, that's just too, that line didn't really make sense. I'm going to go back in. I'm kind of editing some of these reflections a bit. Like here in the arms, I made those notations that we talked about where I just sort of, well, scribbled in some paint. We'll just call it that. But see, now all it takes is this is where the clear blue has that advantage because it's not a glaze. I don't have it super watered down. But that just made that a whole bunch softer. I want to say it's, I don't know, 90% paint and the rest is some water. But you don't need mediums and gels and whatever the heck else that you could use. It's just the paint itself and just keeping it simple with some water. Again, using the blue there to get a little bit of separation. I'm going to add some of that to the gloves here. Because why not? That muscle there definitely needs something lighter. Let's see if we can. Her bicep needs to be a bit lighter. No, it shouldn't. No, I was just about to actually make that just too light because it's not facing anything that's. It doesn't. I don't want to say it doesn't deserve a highlight, but it's not facing any light source. I guess that's where I'm going with that. Where I'm going with this, we're going to get some bright shiny things on this blue here. There we are. Because remember that whole thing, we're trying to continue this line of highlights here. And can we do, should we do that on this side? Maybe. Maybe. Oh heck, I'm gonna try using some of that blue right there. We're even gonna use a little touch of it on the face here. Yeah, remember, color goes somewhere, must go everywhere. Let's see, I want to, that's got to have some kind of lighter red. I'm going to just throw some clear red out here. Again, just been using the Reaper clears, clear red, clear blue, clear yellow, and we did actually throw the clear orange out there too. Now, can I just going to sneak my brush down under here. Gonna use some of my yellow. Just trying to get this where you can see it and where I can still reach it with that brush stroke. This also, like where the collarbone, I'm just going to assume the collarbone is. Because this the red's got a little bit muted here, so I'm trying to sort of reinvigorate those up here. I guess some people say, well, wait a minute, haven't you been spending the last 40 minutes sort of knocking down some of those by adding blues in there and greens and everything else? Now, like I said, got to be willing to go back and forth. Where needed, you make a change. You try something, you say, you know what, that really just didn't work. I'm going to try this instead. So still trying to figure out exactly what I want to do. Yeah, see, I'm going to, okay, there's a better transition from the red to that gray. To just, that it kind of bugged me for a while, and that just finally now is resolved. But we also need some little highlight there. What else? What else? Yep, this needs it. Right here on the knee. Try not to make them look too much like gemstones. I mean, there's a temptation for that. There's a temptation to make it look like metal. It's a little bit of a balancing act. Now we've got I got this yellow out here. Some of the highlights got a bit too much, well, almost towards flesh tone color. And we're going to back them away from that. Oh, let's say one thing, there's sort of a kind of a collarbone here. You can see what I'm after right in there. Yeah, there's tighter spaces up in here, and I need to indicate a little more, little bits of shape. We did all that down here, and we concentrated on the face, but then all of a sudden, yeah, now this is starting to look a little more reflective, this surface. Yeah, that was just very plain. We have all this activity here, but then, well, how the heck do you just have this kind of void where there's nothing there? This side too. This you can't have all this reflection stuff going on here and then have nothing here. So I'm gonna do some, but keep that under control. Right? Yeah, all of this stuff needed. It would just somehow it started to get flattened out. Now that, that could just be fatigue. I just didn't notice it. And like I said, I didn't study these things at all. I pretty much, when I was setting up this for recording, well, it is recording it, but for filming tonight and broadcasting, I saw some general references and I didn't stare at them and study them for hours. I just kind of went, oh, well, we're about to go live. Maybe I should look at these references here. I'm just trying to simulate as much as possible someone else who's looking at this for the first time and they don't know how do they want to approach this thing. Because I guess we spend so much time in our own shoes, it's really hard to step outside that and sort of view the world from how other people see it. For me, miniature painting is a whole lot different than the average person, as in a whole lot different. Oh, Oliver asks, have you ever tried the new Chimera colors? Are they similar to the clear? Those were sadly supposed to be here right after we got back from ReaperCon. However, the post office, for some inexplicable reason, while I had a hold mail, decided to try and deliver them while we were at ReaperCon. And after a long time, we didn't even know they did that. Well, the box ended up back in Spain, and I believe Chimera is sending another box this way. I had a chance to try them real briefly at Gen Con. They were supposed to be another one of the, I guess, alternatives to the clears in liner paints because they're a super pure pigment. I mean, I think everybody kind of knows that, right? That was what they were advertised as. But they also have that, yes, it's pure pigment, but you can do some semi watercolory type things with them because they are such pure pigment. They don't break down also when you are just using, and I just used water with them. I know I believe there's like a medium that comes with it. There's like a satin finish thing that also comes with it. Not quite sure. I didn't have a chance to try out all that stuff. I just did a really quick down and dirty demo with what I had. There we go. I need something right here on that shoulder. Right there. See if I can't work in a couple of highlights on the hair right here. We have a whole bunch on the front of the head and not as much back here. Not quite sure what led to that. Again, there's a bit of fatigue. Been working for a very long time today, so it's hard to believe that. Well, at the start of Monday morning, I was editing another video for the Patreon page, the start of Army Painter Series 16. That's scary. That's a lot of episodes. That is a whole bunch of episodes. Like I said, I've got where is he? It's the Voltron. Here. So this I will be painting for the Patreon page. just part of the kind of the regular series, not part of the Army Painter. But see, that's flashing right across the bottom of the screen there. So you do the Army Painter pledge level, and it's $15 a month, and that grants you access to everything. And immediately, straight away, 230-ish hours of tutorials. Lots of, no, actually here. So we've got this, all this reflectivity here. I could have maybe even used some of the Green Stuff World metallic paints, because see how we've got this sort of color shift thing going on? That's just the metallic paints. That is not color shift paint. This is actually series, what, 14 right here? Yeah, I think that was, no, that's series 13. Series 14 was the Cypher Lords. I almost forgot. Let's get a few more there. Looking to get a couple of highlights. Smooth this out a bit. Oh yeah. But this is what I talk about, that refinement, that I say you can spend as much time as you want doing. Well, this is the point where I say, hey, you can spend as much time refining this as you wish, or as much time as you have. So at some point, they had sent me, well, they were sending me some of the brand new figures that hadn't even been released yet, and I was going to try and do some demos on those. It was really going to be fun. Sadly, the box just wasn't exactly handled the way it was supposed to be. So, well, I'm going to work in just a touch of lighter colors there. And I can always, like I said, I can go back and forth here. Some of these edges, clean up things. Taking a little bit of the red liner here. So that needs some separation there, I'm going to say. Oh, sorry, that's starting to wander down. I'm getting a little bit tired here. Now I'm going to go back to some of the original dark blues. That's the blue liner, the clear blue, even a touch of the Leviathan blue. Once again, to strengthen a few of these, yeah. It's not necessarily that I needed it darker. I needed actually more blue. Speaking of blue, we've got some of our kind of a mid-tone color here. It's not necessarily darker, it's just a different color. And that's how we can get a little bit of extra separation there. Can I? I think I need slightly lighter lights here. The temptation is to go berserk and just like chipping, just like rust effects, go too far, too much. But like I said, we can only have so much reflectivity in some areas without showing it everywhere. And I know I had some folds here early on that I just kind of forgot about. there's just kind of a red dot sitting right there. That was one of those things where I said, okay, yeah, for future reference, let's do something over here. Well, it's time to do something over here because the future is now. And I want to, yeah, completely sort of forgot about that. You can't see what I'm doing in there, but I was just painting some red in that area. Oh, speaking of red, I want to see, looking to get there a little more of the red reflected light. This I'm going to fade a bit. Like I said, I know, see, I got blue in the red and I got red in the blue. That's what's going to help make this look. I know, I try not to use the term more realistic when it comes to miniatures because, well, they're miniatures. They're typically some kind of fantasy type thing or sci-fi. So realism is, well, extremely subjective, I suppose, by that point. Can I right here get, yeah, I'm going to even go a little lighter. Can you see it, or is it blocked by that? It's kind of blocked by the piece of cloth there. Yeah, right here. That needs to be brighter on the tip of her shoe there. Let's see if we can get some kind of really light blue highlight here. That, if I'm going to make it lighter, I have to have more of just my concrete color. I think you can see what we're doing right here. So that we just have this line of highlights. It's a weird, unique thing of things like this. It's whether it's metal or anything that is reflective, shiny, blah, blah, blah. Actually, I hope that you can take some of these ideas here that we're using on what is essentially clothes and apply it to metals. So again, see that we add this line even advance up further here. Now we certainly need to get some lighter colors up here. This is a little bit lacking. We're going to have all of that lighter stuff down basically on her feet and down towards the bottom. We have to get some of that up here too. Have to get some of that up here. And this, something going on here that needs attention, and I think that helps. Yeah, this also, oh yeah, that needed some reflected light. What was I thinking here? Well, again, it is now, I think I've been awake for close to 20 hours and pretty much just been working on stuff the whole time in one form or another. So tempted. I was just about to put some kind of blue in there, but here I'm going to take the blue, going to mix it with, actually this is my skin tone, my original skin tone color. Can you see what yeah, you can see it right in here. Ever so slight. It's reflected light, but it's not terribly light. It's more like a reflected midtone. Gonna double down on that. I'm not sure how much lighter I want to get. Okay, well, just touch more light, but having that blue in there was important. And mixing it with what was my original skin tone color. Now I want to mess with Gonna go back to the face here. As always, we kind of go back and forth. You make an adjustment somewhere, and then maybe it calls for another adjustment again. I think I might have to darken the eyebrows a bit too. Just trying to get that thin down. And I'm going to reinforce. Yeah. Now, I don't want the expression to be too angry looking, but I don't know. It kind of seems like it's supposed to have an angrier face. I'm going to play with my brightness here. That's better. Sorry if that's been too light this whole time. Again, I had it set for the previous video that I was recording, so sometimes I forget to have it go back to the starting point. Does make it a little bit easier to see the face, it looks like. Yeah, that, it definitely, oh yeah, it needed that. Just, I mean, that was the slightest touch there, just literally a few little brush strokes, and it made a lot of difference. And as you go into this refining, now there's just, let's turn that frown upside down. It's too much of a scowl. How am I going to do that? Mostly by kind of eliminating that shape right there. Let's get some of the excess off of this. And we will extend that lower lip out a little bit. Up here again. And then I'll do one more sort of, again, lighter application here over the side of the mouth. Kind of make, there we go. That side needs it too. There's just, you can't necessarily, it's weird. You know, the sides of the mouth are, there's clearly a shadow there, but if you make it too harsh and the lips just sort of end abruptly, it can end up with a weird expression, to say the least. Oh, Oliver's back. I love the contrast. Yeah, it's a crazy, the whole reflective thing. Now, one thing I will put on this is the Army Painter anti-shine, because sometimes one paint is a little bit more satin than another, and a good way to equalize those is with ye old Army Painter anti-shine right here. It's the only brush-on sealer that starts out clear and stays clear, because that's a good thing. So I just gotta get me something to drink here. And sorry if that made a sound right into your ear, but it's too late in the day, well, or too early in the morning, I suppose now, because it is 4:57 a.m. my time. Yeah, I do like that, the red and the blue next to each other. Speaking of which, this needs to either be, yeah, I'm gonna go with some kind of a reddish thing here. Highly technical painting term, a reddish thing. Like that. So the idea is to reflect this over here. And then, yeah, work some, not just darks, it's more of a, basically taking the clear red and doing that sort of semi-glaze over it. I'm gonna go, no, I'm not gonna, I was tempted to actually throw in a dark there. That would not have been a good idea. Had to, sometimes you got to stop yourself. You're about to do something, and you go, yeah, you know what? I should just not do that. I think we had plenty of added lights there, but even this blue that I put, I'm gonna tone that down. Same over here. Not gonna wipe it out completely, but just like I said, tone it down. We have plenty of, I think we have plenty of different colors flowing across this. There's even some of the original grays in there. Now, I could even, I guess at some point maybe I should do a little bit of a, I don't know how much of a demonstration it would really be, but show the anti-shine at work. There. Now I'm looking at that, see how that's not actually it's not painted there, that shininess, that's actually just like the paint being shiny. Just like here, I've added some, a little bit of a wash there, and it's kind of shiny. Here, let's work in some, just trying to take away some of that edge. It was frayed. I didn't want that. This is again, now you can't quite see it. That's better. Oliver uses the ultra matte varnish as a brush on. That also works, but yeah, well, here, what the heck? I'm going to, now the trick is, or the key is, you want to use a broader brush like this, but you want one that's really, really, really clean. And I mean really, really clean. I'm going to shake this stuff up pretty well here, like you do. And I'm just going to throw this on the palette here and use that as a palette. And now you can see what I mean. That is just, it's very clear. And as I brush it, you see, can't even see that at all. I used the Vallejo brush on, and it was like almost like Elmer's glue. Now it did sort of dry clear, but I said, I don't want something that starts out like Elmer's glue. I want something that starts out clear like this. Now as this dries, see how it also kind of magnifies the darks? It's almost like you're varnishing an oil painting where some of your colors kind of come back to life. It looks like you just applied them. But like I said, it's not going to stay shiny. Now, the thing is, too, you see we're using really light applications here. It's practically just being feathered on here. Not super heavy with the application. Keeping it really, really gentle here. As I said, what'll happen is it'll dry nice and clear, and it's going to give you a really solid protection. The best thing too is that I can brush this on as many layers as I need to, like here on the face or the hair where maybe it's going to be contacted a lot. Well, then maybe I'll do 3, 4, 5 layers there. There's other parts of this that won't be touched at all. Why would I go crazy with a bunch of layers of stuff? Oh, and the other thing is too, the best benefit of all is that we're indoors. We're temperature climate controlled here. There's no 100% humidity or freezing cold. Well, we hope there's no freezing cold in here. None of those things that make your spray-on sealer go all Frosty the Snowman. Because I don't think people, want Frosty the Snowman miniatures. I think they want something that looks more like this. And hopefully this gives you some ideas on how to paint this type of stuff. Because again, I have never had a chance to do this before. I I think I've found some other figures. Actually, I found a Dark Eldar figure here. Where is she? She's around somewhere. And I was going to try and do the same thing, kind of do a little bit of a shiny latex. Now, she's not completely like covered it in that like this one was, so it'll be a little different. But yeah, if yeah, you want to get more alerts, if you're new to this, you're just seeing it for the first time, I try and do these crazy live sessions as often as I can. Somewhere between 2 and 3 a week. Actually, well, let's just say that the more the Patreon page starts to cover monthly expenses and things, the more of these I can do, believe it or not. But if you want to, you know, drop a like on this, that would always be handy. You can always ask me questions in the comment section. And what was, oh yeah, so clicking on subscribe is not enough. You have to click on the notification bell, because otherwise you don't actually get the little notification that I'm live, and then you can't join in on all the crazy fun. Yeah, I mean, here, you can kind of see a little bit thicker, but yeah, what that really does, it equalizes everything. Now everything is the same level of finish, and you can see I've already brushed down in some parts 3 layers, but the key is don't slop it on. I found that out the hard way. Most when I tell you things, and I say, you might want to keep this in mind, it's because something bad happened to me, and I'm trying to keep you from having to deal with that same thing. So, like I said, keep it. Yeah, see how that now doesn't quite have the difference in the shine the way it did before? Very nice. And we'll do a little bit more on the hair because, I mean, that's going to get touched more. This is going to get some more contact. This is also the same stuff that I use, say, when I'd use it on oil paint miniatures too. That works fine. It works just fine. So there's your Captain Marvel, again from Marvel Crisis Protocol. Let's make that bigger. I don't know if I don't think it's gonna let me. Yeah, it's not gonna let me zoom in any further, but we'll get her closer. So hopefully this has been a productive little lesson for you guys and helpful. I mean, it was for me. I got something out of it. Oh, hey Kim, how's it going? Thanks. This was pretty simple. We just used the Reaper liner paints, nothing special. And then the Reaper clears. Here, let's grab. This is kind of the core of it right here. Clear blue, clear red, clear yellow. That's that right there. There's your color wheel. Those 3 colors, that should let you do just about everything you need to do. Now we're just showing the Army Painter anti-shine at work here. All right, we'll get our palette moved away here. Clean up that brush. But like I said, find one that you have not used for painting because, yeah, that won't go so well for you. Just getting myself a brush here real quick to do a few more little touches. I'm going to try and solidify that edge there. And you see, you can paint over that stuff too. That's another reason why I wanted to do this, was you can go ahead and then paint back over the top of it. I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. So I just put sealer on there, and now I'm painting right back over the top of it with no problem. This right here, there's a brush stroke that went haywire that I just needed to clean up. This needs to be darker here. And I'm going to see if I can't sneak in just the tiniest amount of dark right there. Yeah, okay. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. Again, Marvel Crisis Protocol from, was it Atomic Mass Games? I believe it is. Oh, thanks, Falcon. Much appreciated. So, oh, thanks, Trevor. Appreciate it. So thanks for Cam, Trevor, Oliver, Falcon. Well, I don't think we had a Gary or a first last, but we had a Bethany and we had Fruity Toots. We had Albert, and I'll go all the way back to the beginning to see who. Oh, and Mariah. Yes, thanks for joining in. Oh, and Runs with Caesars, of course. So thanks again, guys. I will catch you again on the next live video, probably maybe Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So there's, see all that fun reflected light and colors and such. Really fun. Thanks again.